Lucio's morning began like any other. Black coffee, the sound of the river flowing past his open window, and the geological map spread out on the kitchen table. He had worked alone for years, preferring to analyze rock formations in remote areas to dealing with teams or bureaucracy. But that day, an irregular GPS marking caught his attention. The rock located 3 kilometers from the nearest town seemed to emit a faint vibration, registered by his equipment as a continuous tremor. When he reached the site, he noticed a fissure in the stone from which a silvery liquid, dense like mercury but translucent, flowed. Curious, he collected a sample. Examining it under his portable microscope, he saw particles moving in circular patterns, as if breathing. Back in town, Lucio found Yara, a biologist who shared the municipal facility with him. She frowned upon seeing the material. "This isn't natural," she said, dripping a few drops onto a slide. Under ultraviolet light, the liquid glowed in shades of blue and red, alternating colors every minute. Initial tests revealed that it reacted to electrical stimuli, multiplying its mass without any visible energy source. That night, while they were recording observations, a resident appeared breathless at the door. His cornfield had grown 3 meters in 12 hours, but the ears were twisted, with pulsating black veins. Lucio and Yara exchanged glances. The next morning, they went to the farm. The field looked like something out of a nightmare. Stalks thick as tree trunks, leaves hard as leather, and a low hum in the air. Yara collected soil samples, while Lucio noticed markings identical to the rock fissure on other nearby stones. As the sun set, they decided to return to the original formation. It was now larger, as if the stone itself was expanding. The liquid flowed in thick streams, forming pools that reflected the sky in distorted colors. Unconsciously, Lucio touched one of the pools. For a moment, he saw disconnected images, underground cities, symbols carved into walls, and faces he didn't recognize. Yara pulled him back, but it was too late. That night, he dreamt of voices whispering in a language without vowels. On the 3rd day, a man in a worn suit appeared in the lab. He identified himself as Dr. Silva, a representative from a research foundation. He knew everything about the liquid, the plants, and the dreams. He offered resources to continue the studies, but Lucio refused. Later, Yara confessed that she had sent data to colleagues in another city. "We need help," she insisted. Lucio didn't respond. He had already noticed changes in himself, childhood memories that weren't his, a strange clarity in solving complex problems. That night, he returned alone to the rock. The liquid now formed a vast pool, almost a lake. Dipping his hands in, he felt a sharp pain followed by a wave of heat. In seconds, he saw the future. The abandoned city, the liquid spreading across the world, transforming everything into something new and terrible. He ran, but upon reaching home, he realized that the veins in his hands glowed softly in the dark. At dawn, Yara found him unconscious on the floor of the facility. The original sample had vanished, replaced by a crystalline residue. She didn't see the markings on the walls, written in an ancient language that Lucio now understood perfectly. He awoke hours later, remembering nothing, but with a certainty, the liquid wasn't a danger. It was a key. And someone, somewhere, had already turned the lock. Lucio awoke to the sound of muffled voices outside. Yara had spent the night analyzing the crystalline residue left in place of the original sample. "It's not inert," she said, without looking at him. "It reacts to touch, but only when it wants to." He didn't speak of the markings on the walls or the language he now understood as if it were his own. Instead, he asked about Dr. Silva. Yara hesitated. He called 3 times. Said he has information about other incidents in distant countries. As she spoke, a group of residents arrived at the door, demanding answers. Their clothes were stained with a dark substance, and their voices sounded synchronized, like a discordant choir. "The plants are moving," a woman said, showing a blurry photo of twisted stalks spiraling. Lucio noticed that everyone had the same eyes, dilated pupils, glowing faintly. Yara suggested evacuating the area, but it was too late. Through the window, they saw silvery streams emerging from between the houses, connecting like veins climbing up walls and trees. By midday, the city seemed to breathe. The walls of the buildings vibrated gently, and the air smelled of ozone and damp earth. Lucio and Yara decided to follow the markings on the rocks, now visible on scattered stones throughout the region. Each symbol corresponded to a point on the map Lucio had drawn years before, during an abandoned expedition. They found a hidden cave behind a dried-up waterfall. Inside, the walls were covered with carvings depicting human figures fused with geometric shapes, surrounded by spirals reminiscent of the liquid. Yara touched one of the images, and a bluish light filled the cave. For a moment, they saw an underground city, crystal towers and creatures that weren't entirely solid. As they emerged, they were surrounded by men in black, led by Dr. Silva. "You shouldn't be here," he said, holding a device that emitted a low hum. The liquid nearby recoiled, as if fearing the device. Lucio felt a sharp pain in his chest, where the veins now glowed constantly. "This isn't yours," he said, not knowing where the words came from. Silva smiled. "It doesn't belong to anyone. It's a code. And you activated it." That night, while Yara slept, Lucio returned to the cave. The carvings had changed. They now showed his face among the figures, connected to a network of luminous threads that stretched across the planet. He touched the wall, and for the first time, the liquid responded, not as a threat, but as an invitation. At dawn, Yara found him standing in the middle of the river, motionless, with the water flowing through his body without touching him. "Lucio," she called. He turned, but his eyes were no longer the same, elongated pupils, glowing in patterns resembling constellations. "It's not too late yet," he said, and his voice echoed as if coming from the bottom of a well. "They gave us a choice thousands of years ago. We refused. Now they're back to see if we learned." Yara wanted to ask, "Who?" but already knew the answer. The liquid had spread throughout the valley, transforming the land into something living and conscious. In the distance, sirens wailed. The army was on its way. Lucio watched the first military vehicles climb the steep road, their red lights slicing through the mist that now permanently hung over the valley. Yara tried to reason with the soldiers, but they pushed her aside, focused on the liquid that flowed through the streets like living rivers. Dr. Silva was among them, carrying a metal briefcase. "It doesn't have to be like this," he said to Lucio, who remained motionless in the middle of the river. "We can negotiate." Lucio didn't respond. His mind was filled with voices, memories of civilizations that used the liquid to transcend their bodies, only to be consumed by it. When the soldiers opened fire, the liquid reacted. Bullets ricocheted off shields formed by dense layers of the silvery material that molded in the air, like giant hands. Yara screamed as one of the men was lifted and dissolved in seconds. His bones glowed through his skin before disintegrating. Lucio walked towards Silva, who was retreating with the buzzing device growing louder. "You don't understand," the scientist said, sweating. "They don't want to destroy. They want to evolve. And you are the weakest link." Then the earth trembled. The rocks around the valley split open, revealing underground chambers filled with crystalline machinery buried for millennia. The liquid flowed into them, activating gears that emitted harmonious, almost musical sounds. Lucio saw flashes of what remained of the original guardian of the liquid, a woman with eyes like black holes, whispering equations in a dead language. She had tried to control the force that now ran free, but failed. Yara grabbed Lucio's arm, who was beginning to glow entirely. "Don't let them take this," she pleaded, but Lucio no longer fully belonged to himself. His skin became translucent, revealing veins of blue light that pulsed in sync with the liquid. He touched Silva's device, deactivating it, and saw fear in the scientist's face. "It's not about control," Lucio said, his voice echoing in multiple tones. "It's about balance." As the sun set, when the last soldiers fled, the city was unrecognizable. Buildings merged into organic forms, trees grew in spirals reaching the stratosphere, and the river flowed into the sky in an inverted waterfall. Yara found Lucio standing on the edge of the new abyss, watching the stars now flashing in rhythmic patterns. "What will happen to us?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he extended his hand, revealing that his palm contained a small pool of the liquid, now golden. "They gave us a chance," he said, "to fix what we broke, or to break it all the way. That night, as the liquid spread across the oceans and deserts, transforming ecosystems into something new, Yara saw Lucio for the last time. He walked towards the mountains, his body dissolving into particles of light. She didn't know if he was dying or being reborn. Days later, when teams of scientists arrived to study the anomaly, they found only a journal by the river with scribbled notes in a language no one recognized and a single drawing. A perfect circle within which was written, in faded Portuguese, "The choice is always ours."